welcome to the program of Bachelor of Science first year, subject Botany, semester 2, course code BOC 102, course title Biodiversity 2, Vascular Plants. Title of the unit, Unit 2, Gymnosperms. Module name, General Characteristics of Gymnosperms. In this module, I'll be talking about the general characteristics of gymnosperms, and at the end of this e-module, student enlists different characteristic features of gymnosperms and also they explain the different terms. What are gymnosperms? Gymnosperms are the trees which develop ovules which are naked, exposed, that is, they are not enclosed inside the ovary. Coming to the general characteristics of gymnosperm, they are evergreen trees or shrubs with xerophytic characters. We say evergreen because the foliage of the gymnosperms remain green throughout the year. The plant body of gymnosperm is a sporophyte and is differentiated into root, stem and leaves. We say the plant body as a sporophyte for two reasons. Number one, each and every cell of the plant body is diploid in nature, and secondly, this plant body gives rise to two different types of spores, that is microspores and megaspores. The plant body shows well-developed taproot system with symbiotic association with algae as seen in the coralloid root of cycas, or with the help of the fungal filaments as seen in the pinus. Whenever the symbiotic association is seen with the algae, it helps in nitrogen fixation, and whenever the symbiotic association is with the fungal filament or the mycorrhizae increases the surface area for the absorption of water and minerals. The stem of gymnosperms is always erect and is profusely branched except in case of cycas where it is unbranched. The stem is rough because of the presence of leaf scars on it. The leaves are dimorphic in nature, that is, two types of leaves, the scaly leaves and the foliage leaves. Foliage leaves are the green leaves which mainly function in photosynthesis. These leaves, they may be simple or pinnately compound. When I say pinnately compound, it shows a central axis called as rachis, and on either side of the rachis, the leaflets or the pinnae are present. The scaly leaves which are there, they are present on the stem. They are smaller in size, that is minute, and deciduous in nature. Now coming to the anatomy of a leaf. The leaves will always show the thick cuticle and sunken stomata, and this is one of the characteristic feature of the xerophytic plants. As we say that the evergreens show the xerophytic characters, this is one of the adaptation that is seen in the leaves. The mesophyll of leaf may be undifferentiated as seen in pinus, or it is differentiated into palisade and spongy tissue as seen in cycas. In gymnosperm, in case of the foliage leaves, the midrib is present but the lateral veins are absent. So their function is taken over by a tissue called as transfusion tissue. Gymnosperms, they reproduce, and they reproduce by producing the reproductive structures, namely male cones and the female cones. Male cones are made up of number of microsporophylls which are arranged around the central axis. Microsporophylls are the leafy structures which will always bear a bag which is called as microsporangia. Each microsporangia will bear number of microspores. Similarly, the female cone is made up of number of megasporophylls. Each megasporophyll will bear number of naked ovules. When we look at the structure of the ovule, ovule is orthotropous, that is, it is erect, straight. The ovule will always show presence of a protective covering which is called as integument, and this integument is differentiated into three layers, of which the outer and the inner one is fleshy, whereas the middle layer is stony. In case of gymnosperms, the nucleus inside the pollen grain, it gives rise to the male gamete which is non-motile. That is, it cannot move from one place to another, but it has to be carried to the female gamete with the help of the pollen tube. The female gametophyte is called as archegonium. It has single egg and a venter canal cell. Neck canal cells are absent. Pollination in case of gymnosperm is wind pollination, that is the anemophilous, and it is direct. Whenever the pollination takes place, the pollen grains or the microspores are carried from the microsporangium and taken to the ovule where they get deposited in the pollen chamber and later they germinate to form the pollen tube. Fertilization in case of gymnosperms is siphonogamous, that is, with the help of the pollen tube, the male gamete will unite with the female gamete. That is, the male gamete is carried towards the female gamete only with the help of the pollen tube. When the male gamete unites with the female gamete, a diploid zygote is formed. And this diploid zygote, it represents the sporophytic generation. The embryo which is developed from the zygote is called as meroblastic. The reason is the entire zygote is not getting converted or will not develop into the embryo, but only a part of the zygote it develops into an embryo. Secondly, the development of the endosperm does not take place during fertilization, but it takes place before fertilization, and hence the endosperm is haploid. Whenever the fertilization takes place, the zygote develops into an embryo, the entire ovule gets converted into a seed. And in case of gymnosperm, the seed may show more than one embryo, and so the condition is called as polyembryonic condition. Now the ovules are naked. They develop into the seed after fertilization, whereas the integuments of the ovule develop into the seed coat. Whenever the seed of the gymnosperm is sown in the soil, it germinates to give rise to a sporophytic generation or a sporophytic plant, that is, the roots, stem and leaves. As such, in gymnosperm, always an alteration of generation is seen. That is, there are two generations, the sporophytic generation and the gametophytic generation. Sporophytic generation is represented by roots, stem and leaves, whereas the gametophytic generation is represented by the male gamete and the gametophyte, that is the archegonium with the egg. And thus, always the sporophytic generation alters with the gametophytic generation and gametophytic generation alters with the sporophytic generation, and so it shows a distinct alteration of generation. Now, out of these two generations, the gametophytic generation or the gametophytic phase is always a dependent phase, that is, it depends upon the sporophytic generation for its growth and development, whereas the sporophytic generation or the sporophytic phase is an independent phase because it can prepare its own food material and it can grow and develop on its own. These are few of the references for this module. Thank you.